Fix It Tony here. So I'm back with our Lexus LS460. Not time for an oil change yet, so we're getting there. We're pretty close. But in the meantime, we're getting a common problem with these LS460s and a lot of Lexuses that use the multi-arm front end, but multi-link front end. Basically, what it means is that you have multiple links, and we'll show you once we get the wheel off, that control the suspension. Less adjustment, everything's pretty fixed. It helps soften the ride and sometimes make it more sporty on the LSF and the other units that use this. The issue with this is because it uses rubber, it runs into some problems with wear. And I'll show you what we're talking about. And you'll get clunking and weird noises and abnormal tire wear. When you're spending a lot of money like I do, I buy Michelin tires. It can get very expensive when you're blowing out tires for no good reason. So we went to Rock Auto, got the parts we needed, and I will show you what I found using a simple breaker bar, how to determine where your problem is in your suspension. This car, again, currently has 208,000 miles on it. I probably redone the suspension 3 times on this car. So these aren't cheap cars to own. If you can do the work yourself, it's dramatically cheaper, which is very nice. But you need to be able to have some simple knowledge on some mechanics and how to work on these. And it's not horribly difficult. And the best thing is that you really don't have to get an alignment after this, because the only adjustment that they can do on these is for the tie rod. So if you're not messing with the tie rod for your steering, you really don't have to do an alignment after this, unless you're noticing pulling to one side or another. So anyway, we'll get the car on the lift, we'll get these parts opened up, and we'll take a look what we got. All right, so we have the wheel off here. So let me show you what we're looking at here. We have 2 upper control arms, a forward and a rear. They have rubber joints that meet up here, and then they have ball joints, each of them does. The common failure point is this right here. As you can see, there's rubber all in there. And there's 2 reasons that these fail. One is just wear and tear. 2, they're not installed correctly. And I'll show you what happens when you don't install these correctly and kind of what it looks like, even though this is wear and tear, but it looks the same. Your ball joints right here generally don't fail. We are replacing this rearward one just because the bolt broke. I'm not sure why that happened, but again, I do buy quality parts, but you never know. Sometimes with some of the aftermarket stuff, you can buy from the dealer, but you will be spending about $2,000. You buy aftermarket, you're looking more like $900. So if you have to do it twice, it ends up being about the same amount of money. I haven't found the dealer parts to last much longer, but you can see again, there's a rubber isolator bushing in here too. And I'll show you why those fail, and well, besides wear and tear. I disconnected my controller for my headlights, and that's just for what the headlights do, because I have to reprogram these, and I'll explain that later, what's going on with that. So down here to the bottom, we have a lower control arm. This is your front one, and this has, again, a bushing inside of it, and then you have a ball joint here. They are kind of leaking, but they aren't any concern. And then we have our our rearward lower control arm, and then our sway bar link, which is right here. I recommend using only factory sway bar links, because if you don't, these tend to make noise. And then we have our strut up here. So you can probably already see where our problem is going to lie. And this is 99% of the time where your problem is. And you'll just end up getting a little bit of a twist in there. You can see it's kind of torn. So we'll take our pry bar here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You see what's happening? See, there shouldn't be any movement in this. So what's happening is when we hit bumps, this is jittering around and moving around, and mostly side-to-side movement. So it's striking places, and you can probably see some of the wear in there, where it's striking in there. And that's where you're getting your little tapping noises. And this is not uncommon, unfortunately. What wears this out, one is just use and abuse, bad roads, things like that, but also installing these incorrectly. You should not tighten on these bolts that go into these bushings. So this bolt here that goes into this bushing, this bolt right here goes into this bushing, and those 2 upper ones, this has to be set at 0, which means that the suspension has to be compressed to the ride height, and then you tighten these bolts down. If you don't do that, what's going to happen is we tighten it right here, and the suspension's down. Once you compress the suspension, this is going to twist. And now you have a constant twisting pressure on this bushing. What's going to happen over time now is that twisting motion is going to tear that bushing. So I've seen that done so many times. Please don't make that mistake. Loosely tighten everything up if you replace these arms. raise the suspension using a jack to, to set it where the right height's going to be, and then lock these down. If you can't do it yourself, if you just want to replace the parts, take it to an alignment shop and have them do it. Do not waste your time replacing these parts if you're not going to do it correctly. So in any case, we can see our problems here. So we're going to go ahead and remove this lower control arm. Very easy. We have a bolt here. We have to remove our tie rod end, our sway bar link. We have to remove our strut bottom, and then we're going to take loose this lower ball joint. It looks hard, but actually this is fairly easy. But we do have to flip the spindle open. So we are going to replace that rearward upper control arm. So we'll flip that forward so we can get to this nut here, and we can take this arm out, and then we'll fight the new one in, and then we'll replace the upper one. It's not as complicated as it sounds. It's pretty easy. We'll get it done in about a half hour. So I'll show you a little trick here. If you use a pickle fork, you can get these out, but the issue you're going to run into is that you're going to damage these boots on these ball joints. So what I do is I screw these on backwards. If you don't have access to an air hammer, it sucks. It's way easier with the air hammer, and basically what you're going to do is just work your way in here and just give that a little push. And I'll do it without holding the phone so I can get this done. But you're just going to give it a little push. And I don't care about this bolt here just because it's already damaged. But this one, I went ahead and screwed the nut on backwards so we don't damage the threads. You just got to be careful because this is a hollow bolt. And if you go crazy on it, you'll snap it off. It's probably what ended up happening to this one, is it just got weak because of having to take this off the couple of times that I did. So in any case, we'll get these off, and there's your tip of the day. All right, so I popped these two out, came out fairly easy just with the technique I showed you. We're gonna take these this bolt off at the top. Again, we're gonna loosely put it together because we're not tightening this bolt until we have the suspension compressed. So next step, we're gonna remove this nut here, and that just holds onto the brake line. This really doesn't have any, it looks like it has tension, but it really doesn't, that brake line here. So now we have straight access to this lower ball joint, and we're gonna use the same technique with the air gun to pound this out, or you can hammer it out. I prefer, if you can, get access to an air hammer, way easier. Then you have 2 bolts here and 2 bolts here, and the sway bar link, and sorry, 2 bolts back over here. Very, very easy to get the rest of this out. So quick note on taking off these sway bar links. They do have a hex key in the inside here. This particular one is going to be 6mm. So you're going to do is just put a 6mm hex key in there. It can be a key or a socket like this one. Put it firmly in there, and then you're just going to reverse. You'll see here in a sec. You're just going to reverse action it. So as you can see, it comes off like that. So anyway, much easier to do with 2 hands. So I'm going to go ahead and get this off, but I just wanted to show you how to do this properly. Don't overspin it, because what you'll do is destroy the bushing. So anyway, we'll move on to the next part. All right, so let's walk through what I had to do here. I did end up having to remove the strut just for clearance, and I'll show you why. Because we have this ball joint in here. And you can see, I forgot, the forward control arm contains the ball joint. This ball joint actually stays with the spindle itself. This thing is damn near impossible to service. So if you need to replace this, I don't even think the dealer said they can't even get this out. You have to buy the whole freaking spindle, which is ridiculous. That's why a lot of people don't do it. As long as it's motion and there's no crazy movement in it, what I like to do is just either replace the boot if it's torn, or I'll go in there and re-grease it when I have this apart. The easiest way to get this apart is a extractor tool, a puller tool. This one right here works best because it'll grab. Let me show you on here. So this is the way it sits. The ball joint goes in from the bottom. This just grabs around the edges here, and it'll grab onto it, and then use it, tighten it by hand until you can't tighten it up anymore, and then throw an impact on it, and it'll push that out. So a little more involved. Requires some tools. These are available on Amazon. I'll link them. They're not terribly expensive, and they're they give you more stuff for any kind of front end work you might be doing. It makes it a lot easier. And they're, I've had these for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now, and I haven't broke any of them except for the tip on this one, which is still usable. So anyway, as you can see, this is a strut mount right here. It's torn in several different places. So that's obviously causing a problem. The other issue is obviously here where it connects to the subframe. It is torn all the way around. Every little piece that can be torn, it's torn. So, and this is where you're going to get noise from. So we'll go ahead, and since we got this off now, this is our castle nut from the ball joint. I'm going to get in here. I'm going to drive some grease into here. That way this ball joint stays greased, since it's not really a serviceable part. And then we'll go get our parts from Rock Auto and start reassembly here. You know, you want to make sure you got the right parts when you're ordering from anybody. This is from Rock Auto. Just so you're aware, every arm on this is different. The uppers, the lowers, they're all different. They're side specific, meaning they're the driver or passenger, right or left. Remember, your left is always your driver and your right is always your passenger. Imagine yourself sitting in the driver's seat. That's how you determine right and left. So anyway, all the control arms are different. So it's very important, go through and double check. Moog has been fantastic for me. I have no issues with them since using their parts, and they're nice enough to actually mark left and right on the actual arms. That makes life easier. This right here, this is going to be our other arm, also from Moog, and they just build good quality parts. And Rock Auto, they have the best prices on these, and they get them to you the fastest. They do charge shipping, but it still ends up being working to be less. Good quality parts, as close to OEM as I've ever seen, so definitely worth spending extra money on. So I went ahead and added some lube to the inside of that boot there, so now we can start reassembly. We're going to go ahead and start with the lower control arm. We'll get it in place loosely, put everything back together as we spoke about. Then we'll do the upper. We'll reassemble again loosely, and then we're going to go ahead and grab one of our stands over here from Vevor, and we're going to go ahead and compress the suspension and make sure we're nice and level. And usually what I'll do is I'll do both sides and go ahead and compress it to right height, and then I'll tighten down all the bolts. And that's the proper way to do it. So let's get her back assembled. All right, so let me go over what we've done so far. And the pry bar comes in for help here. Obviously, this ball joint here is going to spin unless you have some tension. So the best thing to do is grab your pry bar and pry it in between here and that joint, and just put some tension on it as you're tightening down until it's tight and there's no more movement in there. It's torques down to like, I think it's 70 or 80 foot-pounds, but an impact wrench will put it right where it needs to be. The other part we're going to do is remove this control arm, this upper control arm. You have to remove two bolts, one on top, one on the bottom here. So you're going to remove this assembly. Oops, let's put it the right way. Remove this assembly, and then you can take this bolt and nut off and remove this control arm. Reinstall it loosely, reassemble this. The mounts, of course, you can tighten down, but where the rubber attaches, that's where the bushing attaches. We want to go ahead and have that loose until we get the suspension up to right height. All right, so we got her all back together. We put our nuts in here. Don't forget your cotter pins. These are locking type. Use the ones they give you. I went ahead and loosened up both sides up here in the upper control arms. And then when we put it to right height, which we determined by making sure this was level. So once this is level, and when we jack this up with the post lift, we know that we're level. I also put support in the back, part of my dog, to make sure the car didn't pivot. If you're in a driveway, just put a jack back there on the subframe and you're good with that. So we went and tightened these down. Again, I got these wrenches from Duralast from AutoZone a long time ago, probably a decade ago, but they have the curve in the head, so it makes it easy to get in here and go ahead and crank these down. This one is actually in the wrong position when I jacked it up, so it probably worked itself loose or something happened, especially with that bushing down there was bad. So we went ahead and tightened everything down, including down here. We went in and put our sway bar link in, using our special tool to lock that in place. We locked in the nut here to make sure that this bushing is oriented preloaded for the suspension and also for the control arm right here. So we got everything buttoned up. We're gonna go ahead and get her off the lift and take her for a test drive. See if we have the noise gone now. All right, we're back from the test drive. Got a car wash, so she looks all nice again. Again, for having 200,000 miles on her, she doesn't look bad. But again, we take very good care of this car, minus the curb rash, which was on there when I bought the car, when I had 60,000 miles. You can kind of see your control arms up there, but the ride height is good. There's no more noise, so we solved our problem. Some people like to just replace everything, and again, that used to be me with this car, but this car has 200,000 miles on it. So I'm gonna replace stuff as it breaks rather than proactively, unless it has a problem. Let's try to get the max amount of life out of this car as we can without spending a bunch of money. So, needless to say, car's doing well, and this type of repair applies to lots of different luxury cars that now use this control arm setup, including some of the Genesis cars. The Mercedes-Benz uses this kind of setup. So does BMW and a few of the other higher-end high-end brands. Unfortunately, it is a very expensive car to maintain when it comes to having to pay somebody to do it. So if you can do this yourself with the simple tools that I showed you, and make an investment in some tools, you can keep this car going for a long time. I work for an auction personally, and I will tell you, we get these cars with 300, 400,000 miles on them. And even the older generation, we get them with even more miles. So this is definitely worth the money to keep this car going. It looks nice. It's still going nice. It is right up there with all the brand new cars, even though it is a damn near 20-year-old car. Anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe and like and share. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Have a great day, guys.